to another Excel Toronto Meetup group session. Today we have Eithne Dolan with us from Ireland, teaching us a very fundamental and important topic in Excel, tables. If you haven't been using tables, let me know. In fact, I'm curious. If you want to put in the chat, yes or no, yes, I have been using tables and I know what they do. No, I have no idea, and that's why I am here. Just put in yes or no. It would be great to have an idea of what people are doing these days in Excel. I mentioned that the video is being recorded. We have a YouTube channel for those of you who are new. In a couple of days, we'll be posting the video there, and we'll be sending out an email with any extra information, files that Eithne may share with us, and you can catch up with the recording and redo the exercises if you feel like doing it. And we do that regularly, go back to previous sessions to find information we need. Our team, my name is Celia Alves. I am an Excel developer. I've been an Excel developer in the sense of developing solutions for businesses for a couple of years now. These days I work with Sheetcast, which happens to be our sponsor as well. And at Sheetcast, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I work as an analyst, business analyst, in fact, and I'm also a brand ambassador for them. And Grania, she's not with us here today. She's the co-founder of Women in Excel. And Aurora, she just joined us recently in our team. She's a freelance consultant. Her background is mostly in IT related, but she's passionate about Excel. And it's great to see people that do not necessarily do Excel all day long, but they still love it and find the time to be with us. So thank you to all our team. We have a couple of sessions already booked. In fact, we have sessions already booked up to the summer. In August, we will do a break. The next few sessions will be the next one about charts with Anne Walsh, and then 2 sessions about Power Query. If you are not very familiar with Power Query, I really recommend you to come to these sessions. The first one will be more using the user interface and learning how to automate data importation using Power Query, which is already available in your Excel. And then in June the 11th, we have Shandip Chabra, who wrote a book recently about Power Query M, the M code, and how to use it to go beyond the user interface and be able to do even more, better and stronger and more robust and more effective queries. So feel free to check this up and to register. Like I was saying, Sheetcast is our sponsor. Sheetcast is an add-in for Excel that allows us to program for the web using Excel as a programming language. So now with Sheetcast, I can transform my workbooks into something that work as a web application online. And I don't need to know how to program to create web pages and all the web page functionality, because the add-in does that for me. It's quite amazing. I've been saying that I should deliver one session here about Sheetcast, and I will do it at some point, but the opportunity has not come up yet. So we'll see. And we have other sponsors. Solving Excel is my company. Mr. Excel just joined us recently as a sponsor. He offers 20% off from all his digital books from his store. You have information that on Meetup on our page. You can find information there how to get 20%. There's a code for that. And Women in Excel, the group that Grania found, it's a group for women on LinkedIn. And there's a bunch of more resources. You will get a PDF with these slides later when I send the email after the session. And then you can find here all the links for all the different things I'm mentioning, the different resources, including the YouTube channel from our meetup and also my YouTube channel and the newsletter and all that. Oh, this one does not need to be here. And this other one is not needed today either. So Eithne, thank you so much again for being with us today. It's really a pleasure. I met Eithne a couple of years ago in one of my trainings about Power Query. She was one of my students today, and today she teaches Power Query, and she's passionate about it, and that just makes me very proud and very happy. That's
I learned from the best.
Thank you. And so I will read you Eithne's bio. Eithne, that's how we pronounce her name, hails from Galway in the west of Ireland. With 35 years experience and a background in computer science, she began her career as a programmer and project manager across various business sectors. Her involvement in developing year 2000 software for a large multinational took her around the globe, teaching others how to use it. This experience ignited her passion for training and empowering people with knowledge, and confidence. Soon after, Eithne left the corporate world to establish Your Online Training. That's the name of her company, offering two key services, which are customized live virtual Microsoft application training and corporate LMS on-demand training. And so Eithne teaches about all things Excel, Power Query, Power BI, SharePoint, Teams, and so on and so on. So you can find information about her. We will be putting the links and you can get in contact, and they are already in the chat. In fact, you can check there. So enough for me talking, and thank you for your patience. Eithne, thank you so much for joining us again, and the stage is yours. Feel free to fill in any gaps and let us know about the tables. What's up with the tables?
Thank you, Celia. Thanks, Aurora. Can I confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, we can
Okay,
see
so
it.
let's get started. Firstly, it's lovely to meet everybody here. Today I'm looking at Excel tables, and this is an essential series. So it's for people who are new to tables, but hopefully those who have some knowledge will gain more. So let's get started. So first of all, Celia said who I was, and as she was rightly said, I'm from Ireland, the west of Ireland here, just on the coast in Galway. And she's already gone through the introduction, but that's what I do. I deliver Microsoft training around the world, virtually from my home here in Ireland. And to date, I have trained over 20,000 people. So I'm just going to ignore this bit, except for the last bit. In terms of the services that I provide, I have on-demand training courses available for sale to individuals, and I also have a series of courses that plug directly into client learning management systems so they can learn what they want, when they want it, without waiting for the next course. So let's get straight into it. What we're covering today is Excel tables. I'm going to demonstrate first through PowerPoint what it is and the benefits, and then we're going to actually create all of them in Excel. The file, as Celia said, is provided, and there will be time throughout and afterwards for questions if you have any. So what are Excel tables? Let's start with that. This here, what you're seeing, is a normal data range, not in Excel table format. And if I were to convert that into a table, this is what it would look like. Immediately, I know this is a table because filter arrows get automatically applied. This banding here, i.e. shading of every second record, is there by default. And the most important bit is this little backward shaping L at the end of the table, which denotes the last record in that table. When you create a table, and we will be doing all of this in Excel in a moment, but when you create this table, you will notice you will have a new tab on your ribbon called Table Design. And I would always recommend naming your tables to give them something meaningful based on what they are. So in this example here, this table is named Table Quarter Sales. To convert data into an Excel table, it's really simple. Click anywhere on the data set and just Insert Table. That's all you do from the Insert tab. Every table has a name, and in this example here, I named the table TBL Quarter Sales, and it has 4 columns. The first is name, next Jan, Feb, March. If I was to create a chart from a table, so this same table that I showed you a moment ago, the same data set, if this was not a table, which it's not, it's just a regular data range, the cell range here is A1 to D6, and people would create a regular chart just like I have done there, and that looks perfect, and it is fine. If I was to convert that data set into a table before I created the chart, we would create the chart, but this time the chart would be based on the name of the table as opposed to the finite references A1 to D6. And again, this looks brilliant. But what about, is it dynamic? So if I add a new record to the end of this normal data range, there's absolutely no reflection of that in this chart. And bear in mind, if there was other charts, other formulas, other objects, they too would not be updated to reflect those changes. You would have to manually do that. Whereas in a table, if I add a new record, immediately that is reflected in any of the dependent objects, formulas, etc. Why? Because when I created this table, when I created this chart, I built it based on that table. The table grew once that record was added, so it automatically included it. Any questions so far? Is everybody? Celia, you might just let me know because my chat's over on another screen. In terms of calculations, this is a little small table again, and you can see here the table name is Table Quarter Sales, and it has 4 columns. Let's say I wanted to add, somebody's interested in just adding the values for January. If this was a normal data range, we'd probably go the sum of B2 to B6. Again, it would give us the answer, but it's not the right way to do it or the best way to do it. Instead, we should refer to the table name, which we know is Table Quarter Sales, and the column. That means if new records are added for January down the line, it's still going to include all of them because it's pointing at the column as opposed to an absolute cell reference. In terms of row inheritance, what does that mean? In this example here, I've created a table and I have a few things added to it. I've data validation, which is drop-down lists. I have conditional formatting, which you see here, the green data bars. And these values here in the sales column, we calculated them using a formula, multiplying quantity sold by price. If I add a new record to this table, you can see the end of table marker is just here. If I add a new record to that table, it immediately inherits everything from the previous record. So it has the data validation, it has the conditional formats, and it has the formulas. And one more thing before we get into it is the type of data we need. How does the data need to look before we create tables? So this is the perfect type of example where you've headings across the top in each column, and in each of the columns you have like type information. So for example, this is a date column, so I'm expecting to see dates. Quantity sold, I'm expecting to see whole numbers. This type of data set is not good. You can't have full blank rows, so you'd have to get rid of them. That if I tried to create a table, it would either do one of those parts and convert that into a table. Likewise, you can't have blank columns, you would have to remove them. It's okay to have a few blank cells randomly everywhere, that's fine, but just bear that in mind before you create it. So we'll get straight into it, and I'll move over to this Excel spreadsheet, which I have. I'll get through as much of this as I can. Celia, as I said, if I go over, just interrupt me, feel free. So this is the little data set I talked about. And the first thing I'm going to do is click anywhere on a non-blank cell and convert it into a table. To do that, from the Insert tab, I choose Table. Notice when I hover over that, the keyboard shortcut also appears. So I could instead have done Control T, but for the moment, I'll do Insert Table. This little dialog box pops up. My table has headers is checked. This means that Excel has identified that the header row is different from the rest of the records, so therefore we'll treat that as headers. I'm going to click OK here. And as you saw on my PowerPoint, you're seeing the banded rows, the filter arrows, and again, this little fella down here, the end of table marker on the bottom right. Whenever I create a table, I mentioned the first thing I will always do is name the table. So I click on the table, and as I mentioned, Table Design tab is here. It's a contextual tab. You only see it when you're on the table. If I click off the table, I don't see it. I'm back on the table, Table Design tab, and over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to name it. I always start my tables with the name TBL, and for more advanced Excel users, it just means that when we're using formulas, they're all listed alphabetically. I'm going to name this TBL Quarter Sales. Just bear in mind, you cannot have spaces in names. So if in the table names, if you wish to separate them, maybe use an underscore and press enter when you're done. And just to show you that, if I click down here on the name box underneath it and select that table, the table is selected, and notice it did not select the columns. So that's the correct way a table is. Let's create a chart, like I mentioned, also in the PowerPoint. I'm just going to go to the Insert tab and choose a regular column chart, just a standard basic one here. There's the chart. Now let's add a new record here. This is the original data set. Here's our end of table marker. I'm just going to type in a record for myself. Just put in some random numbers here, and immediately you can see the table or the dependent chart has been updated to reflect that. So again, that's just a chart, but there could be multiple charts, and those charts could be in other worksheets, etc. I'm going to delete that chart just by clicking in a blank area and pressing delete. Let's add a new row. So I'm going to put in a new row here for sales. I have the window open. It's very warm in Ireland today, which is very unusual. We probably only have a 1 day summer, but there's flies hitting my face. So apologize if you see these things running around. Okay, so back to what I said, formulas in Excel. Let's say, I know this doesn't make sense, but let's say I wanted to add 130 and 160. If this was a normal data range, I would go equal to, I would say E4 multiplied by F4. But when we do this in Excel tables, when I click on the cell reference, it refers to the column which it lives in. You see that? So it's basically saying the value in this record for the February column. And I'll just say plus just to show you and click on the 160 and it says it for March. So that's how it does it. But that's not what I want here. I want the sum of these. I'm just going to manually type in equal to sum, open my bracket and highlight the 3 cells. There's nothing unusual here, but notice it has referenced the name of the table and then it says January colon March, which means the January over as far as the March column. You don't need to type it in, it does it itself. And immediately that ripples down through every record. Why? Because every record inherits data formatting and calculations from the previous record. So what we've done now is we've added a row and we saw that the end of table marker, if you like, the table absorbed the new column or the new record. And the same when we added a column here, the table auto expanded to include that new column. What if I add a column to the left? Just make some space here and I'm going to type a date column here, just a date heading. Notice the table didn't recognize that this new column should be part of it. And that doesn't happen, but we can fix it. To do that, click anywhere on the table, up to table design. And where we named the table earlier, underneath that, you will see resize table. And this is how you used to resize pivot tables years ago. But you can see here it says C3 to G9. That's the current cell reference. I can either re-highlight it here manually myself, or alternatively, I could have gone in here and just edited and typed in B. I'm just going to hit OK. And now you can see it is now part of the table. I'll just put in today's date. Control semicolon is a shortcut for today's date. Bear in mind, I am in Europe, therefore you're seeing it in DDMMYYY format. Okay. Before we leave this, selecting in a table. If I will be looking at this in a moment, to select items in a column, one way of doing it is hovering above the table and gently moving down till you see a dark black down pointing arrow, at which point you can just single left click your mouse. I'm a bit of a shortcut person. I prefer to use keyboard shortcuts. So generally what I do is click anywhere in the column and do control spacebar. That will achieve the same thing. So that's how you select columns. To select the entire table, you could manually select the first column and drag you over, or alternatively, at the top left-hand corner, until you keep your mouse hovering till you see a diagonally down right pointing arrow, at which point you single click and you have the table selected. And before we move on, table styles up here on the top right of the table design tab. When you click here, you have a number of styles, and as you see, as I'm even hovering over them, you can see the effect of what they look like. So you can even create your own. And this section here in the table style options, it's also important to look at that. When you create a table, by default, filter arrows appear, as you can see to the right of each column heading. If you don't want them to be there, you'll see later on why you mightn't, just uncheck filter to do that. Also header row. I still don't know why people wouldn't want this, but if you uncheck that, your headings disappear. Click it, it's back on. Banded rows is where you have every alternate row shaded. If you don't like that, you can uncheck it and you could do banded columns instead. I'm going to go back to banded rows. And this one here, first column, when you click it, it almost draws your attention by highlighting it, and the same with last column. They could be particularly important values. I'm going to uncheck them. I'm leaving out this one. I will come back to it later, the total row, but that's everything in terms of the basics: creating a table, styles, adding rows, adding columns, etc. While we're here, if I wanted to delete a column or delete a row, if, say, for example, I want to delete this date column, I don't need to select it. As long as I'm somewhere in the column, right click and choose delete, and notice it's delete table columns. Okay, so just, it's not the same as deleting a column in an Excel spreadsheet. This one
Can you
here,
please go back still, Edna? There's a
sure,
couple of questions.
sorry,
One is a question someone asked and we already answered, but maybe other people have the same answer, which is how to convert the table back to a cell range.
perfect. And I'll just move this over here because I
I
have
don't
it
know,
on.
maybe you were going to
Yeah, I'm going to, I'll
touch
just,
on it later.
Yeah, I'll touch on it, but I can do it now. It's no problem. I'm here now. I've moved over to the second last worksheet called Convert to Range. Now, these are just two identical tables that I've applied to these. You'll either love them or hate them, but you can see I've added these table styles to them, okay? Now, if I want to convert this back to a regular table, I would be wary of this. If I click here on this table, I want to convert it back so it's no longer a table. Up here on the table design tab, I choose this little option here in the tools group called convert to range. Now, when I click on that, it gives you a little notification. Are you sure you wish to convert it? Yes, I am. Click yes. And it still looks like a table, but it's not, because if I click on it, no longer do I see table design tab, nor do I see an end of table marker. So if you want to, and then you're left with having to reformat this to get rid of the shading if you don't like it. So if you ever want to do it, if you want that, that's fine. But if you'd like to have it back so that there's no formatting, and I'll do it in the bottom table, I would click anywhere on the table, and from the table design, I would get rid of the style that I've applied by clicking up here in table styles, choosing the very first one, which is light. It's still a table, it just has no formatting in terms of colors. And at that point, I would click convert to range, because then you don't have to worry about getting rid of those shading colors. Is that okay?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
I now I see you have a dedicated tab there. And there was another question. If there is a way to set a default table style. Again, maybe you have it planned for later, or maybe not. Just a question that
There is a way, and you can just go right click on the style you like and choose set as default. And that means when you create a table from this point forward, it will be created in that style will be applied to it. And in fact, you can create your own table styles. I haven't covered that because it's a bit finicky, but you can go in and do that yourself. I'll certainly show you, but I think
yeah,
for
if you
the
have time at the end, no worries.
for the time frame we have, I think there's kind of more important things. But certainly, if anybody's interested, I will cover it.
Thank you.
No, not at all. Please keep asking. So here we are again. This is another table. I've named it table salesperson. And this was the example I showed earlier on. Here's the chart that I created based on it. And I want to create a formula here outside of the table that gets the total values for March. For no apparent reason, I'm just going to do it. So I'd go equal to the sum, or click auto sum, whatever, and highlight the column in the table like I showed you by either clicking above it or alternatively clicking on any cell in it and then using the keyboard shortcut Control Spacebar. And there you can see it has included the table name followed by the column which we selected. I'm going to press enter. You don't need to put in the closing bracket, and you can see the answer there is €1,700. Okay, again, I'm in Europe, it's not dollars, so you can just, it's the same thing. Let's do the exact same thing down here, except it's not a table. So I'm just going to manually type equal to the sum, and in this case, I'd highlight the cells. So it's E14 to E18, press enter. And that looks great, okay? Now we have a table with two dependent objects in terms of a chart and a formula, and the same here. Let's add a new record. So I'm going to take this record here at the end, and you'll have this spreadsheet afterwards. And if I add this to the end of the table, okay, immediately the table has auto-absorbed that new record. We can see Pauline Moore here in the chart, and we also see that the total value for March has updated to include that additional value. I'm going to do the same thing down here. I've added it to the end of the data range. This is now out of date, as is this. So you can imagine this is only a very simple exercise with two dependent items, but you could have multiple dependent items. So for me, it's a no-brainer that this is the better way to go. Deleting rows and columns. Any questions, or are we okay, Celia? You're on mute, Celia, sorry.
Sorry. Is there an option to filter to different line, not the first line, like in the middle of the table?
Nobody ever. Yeah, I
if you, I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Yeah, I'm not
But
sure
then
either.
Owen is saying you can manually, but I wouldn't recommend. Is there an option to insert filter to different? Oh, okay, I see. Now I see. Inserting filter buttons in the middle of the table, I think defeats the point of a table, I guess.
Do you mean like coming in here, say, for example, and putting filters here?
Yes, if it's organized differently, I want to exclude first half and I want to only organize the second half, and I never figure out how to place filter in the middle of the table.
Maybe a case scenario to look into. It's probably, I don't know.
I would say pivot tables is what I was going to say. If you know,
or Power Query, but
yeah, it sounds to me like you'd need two different end reports to achieve.
Or create a helper column or a couple of helper columns that help you identify what you want to filter and what you don't want to filter. So then from there you can work on those items. You use those helper columns. It all depends on the scenario. That's what comes to mind at the moment with what I understand from the case.
Okay, will I continue, Celia?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. I'm in the next worksheet now, delete rows and columns. I already explained how to delete a column or multiple columns. You either select a column, right click and delete and choose table columns. If you wanted to delete more than one column, you just highlight a cell is enough in each of those columns and right click delete columns. But I'm drawing this to your attention because sometimes this can happen. I've made it very obvious here, but you can see I have a table here, but I have just a normal data set over here on the right. And if I wanted to delete this record in the table, a lot of people inadvertently make a mistake and they will select row 6 like this. See the way I've done that, as in a regular Excel, and they'll go right click delete. Now I've purposely highlighted the one in yellow on the right so you can see. But by doing that, you've also deleted other information that you potentially do not see or know is there. So that's really important that you delete table values correctly. So to delete this without affecting any other data on the worksheet, click in any cell. You can select it, but any one single cell is enough, and go right click and choose delete. And at that point, delete table rows, and this will leave this unaffected. Just be careful of that. Next thing is slicer. And a slicer, if for people who don't know what it is another way to filter data. So like Irene, you were talking about a minute ago, first thing I'm going to do is convert this into a table. I showed you could do it from insert table, but this time we'll use the keyboard shortcut Control T. So Control T and press enter, and there's our table. I'm in a table. Again, I always name it just out of habit. So I'm going to go up here and call this table data, just some random name. Now, we can filter from this as often or as little as we like. So let's say I want to filter by region, and this is just a standard filter. So we can use our regular manual filter. So I've filtered for East. I'm going to choose mountain bikes for product. So I'm going to do 3 filters, and I will choose values in Dublin, which is in Ireland, Dublin, okay? And we can see we've 3 records, and that's fine. So it works just like it did before tables even existed, but it's very finicky. And for me to clear individual filters, I'd have to go into each one individually and go clear filter from. I tend to use this one up here on the data tab, this little button here, clear, which I've added to the quick access toolbar by going right click, add to quick access toolbar. So I click on that button because that clears all filters in one go. But instead what we can do is use a slicer instead of a filter, which essentially works like a filter without the need for drop down arrows, etc. It's much more interactive and visually appealing. So again, to do this, click anywhere on the table, up to Table Design tab, and in the Tools group over here, I'm going to choose Insert Slicer. Clicking on that, and you're presented with a list of all of the headings as you see in the original data set. Basically it's saying you can choose to filter on any of these. I'm going to choose the 3 of them. I could do all of them if I want, but I'm just going to choose 3 and click OK. And I'll just drag these. When I'm dragging them, just make sure it's easier to drag in a blank area. So you can see here I have 3 what we call slicers. Now, what it does, each slicer, so this region slicer essentially shows all the unique items within the region column. Same for city, shows each unique item within it. When you select a slicer, you can see these fill handles around it. You'll notice you have a slicer tab at the top, okay? And from that, just like we did with the tables, you can click on the drop-down arrow and choose different styles. Again, this is just a nice to have, not a necessary need to have, but you can again, do your own custom ones if you like. So here I have 3 slicers, and I'm going to do the same filter action I did a moment ago, if I can remember it. I think I did East, and I did Dublin, and I did mountain bike. All right. See how quick that was. But what I also love about that is it's instantly obvious what I have filtered on. It's quick. And to clear a filter, for an individual filter, I can click on the top right of each one of these, or alternatively, I could still use my clear all button. That will do. If I wanted to see everything from Dublin and Westport, so you can see Dublin is the second item, Westport is the fourth. Click on Dublin, hold down the control key, click on Westport, exactly like you would when you select non-adjacent rows or columns in Excel. And you can see here Dublin and Westport. I'm going to clear that filter again. If you want to select multiple adjacent items, it's like selecting adjacent rows and columns. I'll exclude Belfast, so I'll do Dublin, Galway and Westport and drag my mouse through them, and there you can see it. Any questions on that? And by the way, if you delete a slicer, it's no big deal. If I press delete, just go back and insert one in. It's no problem. I'll do one more thing actually while we're here. Say if these were sorry, I'm just going to undo what I did here. Let me add new records. So I have new records down here at the bottom, and just going to right click cut or control X and paste them to the end of the table. You can see the end of table marker has moved to include these values, which is great. And immediately I now have an additional 2 regions that I didn't have. So slicers are dynamic. If the source data changes, new unique values are added, these 2 will reflect these changes. Now, obviously, there's only 4 regions in terms of north, south, east, west. Another thing sometimes I like, and it can look nice, is to have this. You can see by default when you create a slicer, each unique item is listed vertically in a single column. But I might prefer to see them horizontally this way, okay? So I'm going to just move this over here on top of the table and click on the slicer tab. Over here on the right-hand side, it shows you that the default is 1 column. I can either type 4 in here or alternatively use the up arrows, press enter. There's the 4. I'm just going to resize it to see it, maybe a little wider. And now I can, maybe this is all you need. And you can say, I just want to see everything from the north. I just want to see everything from the west, everything from the north and west. So it's the same thing. So you can work around with that in terms of how many columns you want. Any questions on that before we move to the next section?
No questions. Someone was actually commenting on putting the slicer buttons across, which he just did. And Anthony says he uses slicers to filter multiple pivot tables.
Yeah, you can do that through report connections. It probably is. I was actually teaching pivot tables today, and I think that's just brilliant. You can add 1 slicer, and then through when you select a slicer, if you go to slicer, this button would obviously be enabled report connections. You can click on that and then assign it or link it or connect it to multiple pivot tables. So 1 slicer, when clicked, will reflect in every single dependent pivot table. It's probably what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's really good. Yeah, it's really good.
Just keep in mind that the slicers are a little bit different. They look the same, but slicers for tables and slicers for pivot tables are a little bit different. So anyways, just keep that in mind.
And also
one.
Sorry, go on, Celia.
No, I was going to say one that filters tables does not filter pivot tables and the other way around.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can filter multiple tables the way we can do
I was
filtering.
Just going to say that you can't. Yeah, you can't do it on multiple tables. No, you're 100% right. So you don't, that slicer connections I told you about, it's not available within connecting multiple tables. It's just pivot tables. And the other thing is timeline, which is kind of like a slicer, is not available in tables. That's where you can filter by date components.
Yeah, that's a nice one as well. Thank you.
No problem. I'm moved on to the next worksheet. And again, this is just to draw your attention to it. I'm not going to set this up. I have it already set up. But if you recall, I showed you this on the PowerPoint where, to give you an example, I'll just delete that so you can see it. So here we have a table. And in the table, we have conditional formatting, which is data bars. There's a formula. You can see it's quantity sold by price. And I think it's in city, or no, maybe it's here, in product, I've dropped down validation. If I add a new record, I'm just going to again control semicolon to put in today's date. I'll just copy this here and I'll put in a new value, 56. And you can see immediately that the formula has just rippled down. So too has the data validation. And we also have the data validation and the conditional formatting. So every time you add a new record, it inherits everything from the previous record. And one more thing, just to show you while in there, another thing I love about tables is, if you have a large data set and it's not a table, and the problem is when you scroll down, you lose your headings across the top and you may have to use freeze panes in order to keep the headings visible. That's not the case with tables. If you notice here, you can clearly see the column headings in Excel, A over to H. But if I've clicked on a cell in the table and as I move down, it's almost like the headings of the table haven't superimposed themselves over the default Excel headings. So I really like that, and it'll work when they're no longer visible. So that's just an extra little nice to have. Nearly finished. Thank you for staying with me. The next one I want to show you is totals. I just showed you in a previous example how to create a calculation in a table, and we'll do it here again. I'm going to multiply quantity sold by clicking equal to, click on the 100, multiply by 5232, and obviously everything ripples down. That we're happy enough with that. So that is adding a calculate. It's almost like a calculated column in a table. But what if I wanted totals? So I want total sales here. I want a number of calculations at the end of the table, and we could do them manually, but thankfully we don't have to, because that's also another feature in Excel tables. If I click on table design, remember earlier on when I was going through these options here, and I said I'd come back to this one, total row, in a moment, and this is it. So when I click on total row, in other words, just apply it, immediately this row appears at the end of the table. And this now, if I say, for example, I want to get total sales, when I click here, you'll see a drop down arrow appears, and that will allow me to choose from a number of formulas. I'm going to choose some because I want to get the total sales. Okay, I've written the ones here that I want. If I want the average price, click down here and I'm going to choose average. Quantity sold, who gave me the smallest, who had the smallest order, or what was the smallest order, I'm going to choose min. If by mistake you selected a wrong, incorrect formula, say if I did average again and I meant to do count, no problem, just click down again if you want no formula and choose none, or alternatively just select the correct one that you want. So I said min. I'm going to count how many products we have, so I'm going to choose count. And I'm just going to do one more here. Under date, I'm going to choose max. That'll give me the most recent order. So here we have added 5 formulas. Just going to make these slightly wider so you can see them. Not that wide, a little bit smaller. There they are. And I'm going to move back up here. Now, we have formulas down here, and that's fine. They're great. And what I love about formulas in a table is if we select a value, I have a slicer already inserted, for example, East, we can see that the formulas automatically update to reflect visible cells only. Okay, I will explain that in a bit more detail. If I choose East and South, again, we have the values changing. I don't know if any of you see this, but the one thing I don't like about this is if you have lots of records, I continuously have to scroll down to see the answers, okay? This is just something that annoys me, okay? So what I do instead is I move the totals to the top, and I'll show you that in the next exercise. So I've literally just typed in headings here, as you can see, just to make it look a bit nicer. This is a replica of what I just created. You can see my totals are down here. But as I've told you or showed you or demonstrated, depending on what I choose, particularly if there's a lot of records, we may have to continuously move down to see scroll down to see them, okay? So how do we get over that? Highlight the record. So I'm simply selecting the record that has the formulas, and I'm going to right click cut or Control X, whichever your preference is, Control Home to go back up to the top, and I'm simply going to paste them in here. And I know I didn't explain the formulas, I will in a moment, but you can see the formulas have correctly and they look perfect. Let's test them. Let's look at the records for the East. You can see all of the rows, the West, the South. I love this because I don't need to scroll down. The other thing now is I have this totals, empty totals row, which is redundant. So I'm going to get rid of it. And usually when I'm explaining things in Excel, however you applied it is usually how you go back and unapply it, if you want for a better word. So how did I put that total row in the first place? I went to table design and I checked total row, so I'm simply going to uncheck it. And another reason I prefer it is it's much easier to add records. I can just keep adding records to the end rather than doing right click insert. Any questions on that? Everybody okay?
No questions and no comments.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one, and nearly finished, and this is formulas outside of a table. So up here, I've put these up here, but these could be in another worksheet, maybe like in a dashboard at the front, but I've just got them here for purpose of demonstration. And I've put in 2 regular Excel formulas where if I double click, this is sum total of all sales, and that's perfect. And this one here is counting how many sales. So I can see this is the total number of sales and I had 27, and that's fine. But if I filter, okay, so either regular filters or slicers, and I click north, for example, these remain unchanged. If I click east, they remain unchanged. So by using regular formulas, sum, count, min, max, or whatever, the formula here says the sum of the sales column. And it's basically saying to you, well, I don't care if you've stuff hidden. I'm adding everything in the sales column, whether I can see it or not. But that's fine, but that's not what I want. So I want to show you how we can fix that such that we're seeing only results for visible cells only. And we do that using a function called SUBTOTAL. And what SUBTOTAL does is it works in conjunction with other formulas. So I can say sum, min, max, all of the normal formulas, but by nesting that within a SUBTOTAL function, what it's doing is applying the formula, i.e. the sum, just to the visible cells only. So I'm going to repeat those formulas, but using the SUBTOTAL. So over here, just making it bright yellow so you can see where I am. The formula is called SUBTOTAL. I'm just starting to type it. I see it, so I'm going to double click to insert it. And it's at this point, I tell the formula, I tell SUBTOTAL what formula I want to apply. In this case, I want to do sum, which you can see has the number 9. Now I could manually type in the number 9, but I'm a bit lazy, so I'll just double click it to put it in. Comma to navigate to the next reference. So I'm saying I want to add this column, and the fact that it's in a subtotal formula indicates that it's only going to be add if the records, for visible records only. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to do this once more for count. It's the exact same thing, equal to subtotal, double click to insert it. This time I want to count, which is number 2. Again, I could have typed it in, and I'm going to count all the records in the sales table. So right now, nothing is filtered. We're seeing the entire data set, so we can see the formula results are identical. Let's filter by West. And there you go. You see the subtotal formula has reflected just to add these values here. And if I select these values here, down here on the status bar, you can see that is indeed 48749. Okay. So we'll try another one, southwest or whatever. So hopefully that's clearly, you can understand what I said there. We've done convert range, so I can ignore that. Pivot and pie, just to show you, and this is the very last thing. In here, this is a regular, this was a table, and I would always recommend, I know we're not covering pivot tables today, but never create a pivot table unless it's based on a table, okay? Because if the source data changes or updates, it's very easy to see those new changes in the pivot table. So I've created a very simple pivot table which shows in the rows we have each unique client followed by their total sales, and from that I created a pie chart. You can see there are 4 clients. I'm Rod down as far as Radon, and I'm going to add a couple of new records here. Just a new client called YOT. I'm going to move those records to the end of this table, and immediately if I come up here, right click and refresh on either of those objects, you can see that this new record or this new client has been added to both the chart and the pivot table. If this was not in Excel table format, that would not happen. I would have to go to this and manually select the range from where we were. So there's just one, if I have time to show one more quick thing, Celia, I'll do it, but if not, that's no problem.
You have time. You
Okay.
Go ahead, no
so
worries.
This one, I had to unhid it because I had this one here. Yeah, I just want to show you this one because it's important here. Let's see. Let me pick a table here that we have. Okay, do you see this table here? What was it called? Table sales. Okay. I'm over here and I want to put in a formula here. So this is the TBL, it's the TBL sales, just so you know. And I want to know total, let's see what's in it. Table sales is here. Oh, sorry, where was table sales? Sorry for a second. TBL sales, it was this one here. So I have quantity and sales, okay? Now, I want here, how much quantity did I order? But I want to construct the formula here without ever going back to that original worksheet. So how do I do that? So I could do subtotal, but I'll just do sum here, equal to the sum. Now I know I want to refer to a quantity column in the TBL sales. The reason I name all my tables TBL, okay, is I will type TB, and as I start typing them in, I know I named all my tables beginning with TBL, and FX indicates it's a function, but this little grid-like system icon, if you like, indicates that it's a table. And I know they're all listed here alphabetically, so I can just select the table here, table sales. I just double-clicked on it, but I could have just typed it in if I knew it. How do I now see all of the columns within that table, I do that by entering a square bracket. And when I enter the square bracket, I now have all of the table columns or fields listed to me. So I want to get the sum total of quantity. Sorry, I hit OK too soon. Close my square bracket and press enter, and there it is. So that's just a way of referring to tables without actually being in the same worksheet. So just to finish up, for finish, thanks very much for listening to me. I did mention, Celia kindly said that I could just talk about my own services. I'm not going to bore you. It'll be about 15 seconds. As I said, I do have courses created that you can purchase individually or alternatively through corporate LMS. And when you do, it's very simple. You log on, your courses are here in front of you. You can resume courses and you can follow them through sequentially, or alternatively, you can just search for a specific item. For example, VLOOKUP, it'll list every single video I have that contains VLOOKUP. And when you choose the one you want, you'll see the video, the associated file, or in this case, it was XLOOKUP. I picked the one here at the bottom. So as I said, you can just search when you want, or alternatively, you can just follow a course sequentially. The courses I currently have are Excel Intermediate, Excel Advanced, which also includes pivot tables and Power Query, enough Power Query to give you a really good start to create really good reports, or else there's a bundle. And if it is something you're interested in, there is 40% off today using this code, and these QR codes are how you access them if you want, or alternatively on my site. You won't have to listen to me anymore. I just want to say it was an absolute pleasure. I hope you learned something, because I know a lot of you had experience. So hopefully you might have picked up an odd tip or trick. And thanks again, Celia.
Oh, thank you, Eithne. It was great having you. It was an amazing session covering most of the fundamentals about tables. So thank you for taking the time to join us and to prepare the session for us. There was a question. I wonder if you could test that for us, or maybe you know the answer. If we have a table and it has a total row in it, and then we paste data below the table, will the total row move down?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the question that Owen was asking.
So let's say here we do total row, right?
His comment.
Okay, so let's say here, right? So this is the total row, and if I just pasted it here, is that what you mean?
So yeah. So the table does not expand.
So can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Owen.
Yeah, hi. Great presentation. Thank you. I think what I was remembering is that to get the table to expand, you need to paste it over the total row, and I couldn't remember whether the total row recreated at the bottom of the table.
No,
after
it actually does. I've done this myself, actually. That's funny you say it. So let me just try recreate it. Okay, so let's say these are over here. I think this is what you're saying, Owen, right? So say I have these. Is this what you're saying? I have these records that I want to add to this table, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So if I just select these, I don't normally do this because I always have my totals on the top, but let's try it. So I've just, do you mean just go here, right, and just paste them in? Is that what you mean? Or maybe if I click here, right click.
I usually would try to paste them actually on top of the total row.
You lost your copy, so you need to go back.
Sorry. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it does move it. Okay.
It did move it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I've never, that's good to know. I just think it's so much easier to add to the end of the table rather than having to work. But that's good to know it does it. But
I didn't know that trick either. Yeah, good to know.
Except it didn't continue the formatting. Do you see that?
Yeah, I was going to ask what is it complaining about there? Oh, it's the number formatting.
Yes, this is number and this is general. Now maybe I had manually done this myself beforehand.
Did you paste values, or did you paste? Did you control V?
Actually, yeah, no, I did control V.
So can you try control shift V instead? Just undo that pasting and.
What did you say? Do what?
So undo those columns there, because now they are kind of disrupting the table. So copy again, and then instead of Control V, do Control Shift V to paste values. Oh, it's still does not. Oh, it's weird because
it's
now
right. No, it's right here. It's right here actually. Do you remember there was extra?
Yeah, but
there was additional decimals there.
But we have the little
still have this
triangle things there.
Oh, it's because it's values and
it's formulas.
It's values and not a formula.
Yeah,
exactly,
now it's
so if you just paste the first 4 columns, will it?
Exactly. Well, that's what I should have done actually, because I forgot we just needed
we still have formulas in
the amount and the cost.
Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4 columns only that you need to copy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because is that a formula? Oh yeah, those 3 are formulas. Okay. So I need to do these ones here. Oh yeah.
There we go.
That's my fault. You see, I didn't even look at this data. Thank you, Owen. That's good for me to know. I didn't. I think I did that once by mistake.
To be honest, I didn't know it would do that.
Yeah, thank you. I think I did by mistake once, and I couldn't figure out how I did it. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, what I knew is that if you are adding data to the table and then you are in the last cell of the total column, just above the total, if you put your selector and then you go tab, it adds a new row, and then you can continue on adding, and the total moves down. But I didn't know that the pasting there over the total row would work. So that's great. Okay, lots of new stuff. We have wonderful. There's Anshu is telling us about how to refer to consecutive columns, but Edna did cover that in the beginning of the session. It was one of the first few things she showed. Thank you for your presentation. The formula is more descriptive this way, Anthony says. Yes, when we are using the table structured reference type of formulas, it helps us understand better what the formula is doing. In general, it does, but it can be very confusing for people who are not used to it and just work with cell references all the time. Yeah, I've come across a couple of situations where I try to introduce tables to people, especially in the workplace, and there can be some resistance because they are just used to, depending on the scenarios, it can be difficult to track things. Anyways, it's just a matter of a habit, I think, but I do love tables. Aurora, you have your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to quickly ask how is it different, the sorting of data in a table versus a range? Is it easier? Are there any tricks?
I don't know of any difference, Aurora. So for single sorts, let me just try it. If single sorts, it's the same A to Z, Z to A, ascending, descending. And let me just have a look at, they work in the same way. I'm not aware of any differences. Obviously, when you have the filter columns, we can choose it from here. You know what I mean? Sort A to Z.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that knows anything different?
I was just wondering if you apply filters to the black table there at the top, and if you filter there, would it, so for example, filter region by east, would that affect? Probably not, because you have empty rows. Yeah, you have empty rows in between, so it will not affect the table that you have
Underneath
below.
it,
Yeah. Not sure if there's any more differences. I don't think so. It's same type of filter. Okay, I don't think there's great presentation. People saying thank you.
Thank you.
And
could I ask one more quick question?
Yes,
some people like to print tables. Is there a way to put index column 1, 2, 3, 4 in the table to add another column?
Well, I suppose I would do it. Do you mean literally each record has a numeric? Yeah. But if that was me, again, if there's an easier way, please tell me. I would insert a column to the left. Okay, here. So if we just say index and
use the fill 1, 2, 3 and fill down.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to make it that it works with a formula. Do you know what I mean? So
but if you apply a formula and then you sort, then the result will not go with it.
So you'd have to do, but you know, if you did, never mind the decimals for a minute, right?
Right. Yes. Continue.
Yeah. But I'm just, but that you'd have to manually type that in.
I see, because it's not a formula.
Yeah, because it's not a formula. Do you know what I mean? Unless anybody else knows.
No, I've had applied, for example, the row function a couple of times to tables, just to have a unique identifier, but that's in situations where I just need to find a specific record, but I don't care if that record the next time, instead of record 5 becomes record 10 because I sorted the table. There's a I have used that to then help with other functions and other formulas and whatnot. But if you really need to have a fixed record there for the table, I don't think there's a way of doing that with formulas if you still want to be able to sort. If you disable the buttons at the top and users will not know how to sort, then you're good with doing that. But if you have a formula to determine your index and then you sort, then you can get into trouble.
Yeah,
because it can affect if you have lookups or whatnot.
If you move or copy the table to another location, that's going to change.
Roger, where is it? Rogers? Why Rogers? He's asking, when is it best to use tables versus pivot tables? So these are two totally different things. Coincidentally, our previous session was with Mr. Excel Bill Jelen about pivot tables, and we have other sessions about pivot tables as well. We have another one from a couple of years ago, also with Bill Jelen, and we have another session by Carlos Barbosa. All of them are great. If you go to our YouTube channel and look for pivot tables, you will have some good sessions there to understand the difference and start using pivot tables as well. If you need to work with data aggregation, summarizing data, that's what you do. So tables is to list your data row by row. Pivot tables are what you can use to aggregate your row by region, for example. Would you have anything else, Eithne? Sorry.
No, which is like this one here, like we mentioned, pivot tables is more, it's for data summarization where it aggregates values. So for example, this AMROD value here, if I double clicked on the value beside it, it'll open up the table. That's essentially an aggregated section of that. It's all the sales in that. So I suppose that's for as you said, that's for a different day. Pivot table is different to regular tables.
Yeah, both have the tables word in there, but they are two different objects and do different things.
Yeah.
All right. We have, thank you everyone for joining us. It was a great session. I always like seeing your comments and your questions and people answering each other's questions. Thank you for that.
I see Anthony has said it in Irish.
Oh, and obrigado. And in Portuguese.
And Portuguese, yeah.
It's kind of him. And there's also Tom suggesting adding an index column in Power Query. So that's another. Yeah. If you're using Power Query, then you can have an index column and have one different ID for each column. Will you share this file?
Absolutely.
Someone CWC is asking.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the way it works is I will take a couple of days to upload the video to our YouTube channel. And when I do that and get the file from Eithne, I will send out an email saying, hey, thank you for joining us. Here's the YouTube link. Here's the file. And I'll send a couple of extra information that might interest you, including coupon codes for Mr. Excel's digital bookstore and things like that. So that's what we always do after the meetup, but it may take me a couple of days because I usually tend to do that over the weekend. So that's it. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you so much.
Excellent.
Aurora, kindly put your links again there in the chat. Feel free to reach out to Eithne. And and connect with all of us on LinkedIn. And don't forget to join us another time in the next couple of sessions. Feel free to register and come back. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And that's it for today. It was lovely to have you, Eithne.
Thank you, Celia. Thank you, Aurora. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.